Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
You just finished your breakfast?
My peanut butter toast. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I always put jelly on top of that. I love that. Peanut butter and jelly.
I used to. Peanut butter and jelly and toast is good as well.
I try to reduce the amount of sugar that I eat.
That's it. Yeah.
These days,
Yeah.
my sugar intake had to drop significantly.
Yeah. Well, actually, everyone's intake should be decreasing. Sugar seems to be very bad for people.
But it tastes so good.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's one of the addictive qualities of it.
Why did they make this world where all the nice things are dangerous or bad for your health and stuff?
What I always say is, why is it so inexpensive to eat poorly, but expensive to eat healthy?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine, and it's wonderful weather here. I don't know how it's with you, but this is starting the spring, and everything is starting now. It's really nice. I love it. This is my time of year.
What kind of temperatures are you getting over there?
But that's in Celsius. I don't know how to calculate that in Fahrenheit. It's it's like 10 degrees. It's not very. It's not nice. It should be 21. That's nice temperature. That's when you can just walk around and feel happy.
Yeah, your weather's about the same as it is here then. Temperature, general temperature. It's nice and sunny out today, so can't complain about that.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of everybody listening, why don't you give everybody a little bit of info on what it is that you do?
Are we recording already? Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, my name is Bob Coppes. I live in Amsterdam. I'm a sort of expert on near-death experiences. I'm a member of the board of directors of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And that's an organization that is established in the United States, in Connecticut, but we have groups everywhere in the United States. But we also have groups in other countries like, Canada, of course, but also many countries in Europe and elsewhere. And I got interested in near-death experiences after reading the book by Raymond Moody. That's firstly, and I did my studies in something else. It was in Groningen. It's a city up north in the Netherlands, but it was in economics, something totally different from near-death experiences. It's just something that I got interested in on the side, and it went out of hand, and I published several books on this topic.
Yeah, we all have those hobbies that all get a little off track, Some people study near-death experiences. Some people have an action figure collection. You just went a more sophisticated way with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So impressions of the near-death experience, quotations from over 100 experiences. This is the book that you wrote.
Exactly.
What first drew you to the study of near-death experience? What's your perspective of it, and how has it evolved over time?
Well, I started looking into near-death experiences during my study, which was ages ago, like in 67, 68, 76, sorry, the figures are different, 76 to 80. And I read the book by Raymond Moody. And, you know, what struck me in the book was that there was a story of a woman who told something about her near-death experience, and a very specific item of a near-death experience, which was a life review. And a life review is exactly what it is. It shows you your life in detail, and you can see whatever you did to others or for others. And you see it from a very interesting perspective. You see it from the other point of view as well. So not only from your own point of view, but also the people you do it to or with. And I noticed that when she spoke about her near-death experience or about her life review, she said there was no one judging me. And that really was something that, well, for me was important to hear, as I was raised Roman Catholic with hell and purgatory, where someone else judges everyone. We are all going to be judged according to the Roman Catholic faith. And here was someone who said, well, it's not really the case. No one needs to judge you. You can judge yourself. If someone needs to judge you, you can judge yourself. There's no need for someone else to do that. And that is where it actually started for me. That was really a change. And then it developed further. I also did my studies. I did my career, but on the side, I did some research, and that really got out of hand, especially when I compared near-death experiences with religions.
And being Roman Catholic, I know you almost have the urge to be judged, don't you?
Yeah,
Catholic guilt is a thing.
yeah. But that's really what is invested in people. I've spoken to many Roman Catholics afterwards, and some of them really, well, sort of expected that they would wind up in hell. Because that was told to them. We are all sinners, we are all bad, and only a few virtuous people will go to heaven. The rest will suffer for eternity in hell. And that's not how it is, according to people who have had a near-death experience. So I rather like that story, but there's also more truth in that, and there's also some circumstantial evidence that near-death experiences are real. And I came to that conclusion much later, when I studied near-death experience as well, and I came across a number of people who had some circumstantial evidence to show that their NDE was real.
Near-death experiences, dreams, hallucinations, psychedelic experiences, these are all mind-altering moments in a person's life, or processes, in the brain and everything. How do you define a near-death experience? Like, what makes it different from these other things?
Oh, that's a good question. A near-death experience is actually, from a scientific point of view, defined when you do a tick box exercise. There is a Grayson scale introduced by Bruce Grayson, one of the main researchers on near-death experiences. And there are a number of items you have to tick. The questions: did you see deceased relatives? Did you feel the time difference? Did you see? And there is like 16 or 18 questions. And if you tick a number of those, a significant number of those, we would define that more as an NDE. And you mentioned hallucinations, but hallucinations are really totally different from near-death experiences, because hallucinations are they are chaotic. There's no real storyline in them. Whereas with life reviews, there is some sort of storyline in them. There's a logic to them. People say also that they have been in this otherworldly environment that is totally different from ours, where we are now, but they feel that it's more real than where we are now in this world presently. And it's interesting, there's been a neurosurgeon, even Alexander, he's quite famous NDEer, and he never believed that near-death experiences were real until he had one himself. He was, as we call, a materialist. He thought that if your brain is dead, you totally disappear. Well, he had meningitis, and he was in hospital. He had a near-death experience, and during the time that he was out, he was in coma for quite a while, for a few weeks, I think. During the coma, he had hallucinations that he remembered, but also the near-death experience. And he said there is really a big difference between both. Hallucinations are there's no line to be found in them. It's chaotic. It's not logical. Whereas the near-death experience, he met his sister, his deceased sister, in his near-death experience, and the conversations there were meaningful and interesting, and they gave him. It's a more complicated story, but it gave him some evidence that this was real. He didn't know that he had a sister who was deceased, because he was taken away as an infant from the family and was brought up in another family. And he met later his biological family. And he saw a picture of a woman that he met during his near-death experience. And that was the woman that he met in his near-death experience. That was his sister. So this is what I would call one of the veridical observations, so verifiable out-of-body observations during a near-death experience that give some circumstantial evidence that near-death experiences are real. And there are hundreds of those veridical observations made in near-death experiences.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I should have been a little bit more specific, because when I think psychedelic, I don't think more like your typical off the street everyday drug user, more of like an ayahuasca experience. A mind opening, type of thing. Because I could imagine you could possibly have an experience similar to what you just spoke of in that situation. But that's amazing, being able to learn that you have siblings or loved ones that you've never met, and then it's verified later on.
Yeah. And other story is of a woman who had her near-death experience and saw many deceased relatives, and one of those presented himself as a baby boy, and the baby boy said to her, when you have to go back to your body again, because you cannot stay here, which is typically something that people hear when they have their near-death experience. Someone tells them you have to go back. Your time is not to be here, so go back. And then, but she said,
remember, what a weird way to feel not wanted.
Yeah. Well, people do feel
like if you're someone who deals with your rejection, that's hell.
Yeah, that's actually people who've had a near-death experience want to stay there, because the area there, the space they go to there is much nicer than what they have here, or what we feel here, what we find here. And yet they have to go back again. They're told that your time is not up. You have to go back. There's important stuff for you to do, so go back. It's a rejection, yes. And it's painful for people. It's always painful to come back again. But in this case, the baby boy who she met on the other side told her to tell her father what she had seen. And she did that. And then the father said, yes, we had a child before you were born. And it passed away very quickly. So we felt devastated because of that, and we didn't want to talk about that anymore. and this information went to her, and she gave it back to the father later.
Why would you, or why do you think it is that people say they feel more comfortable in the near-death experience area, in this realm, for lack of a better term? Why would they feel more comfortable there than in their regular life?
It's because they meet what they say is unconditional love. There is no pain, there is no suffering. It is a total freedom there. There's no time. There's no limitations with place. It is an area where everything is open to you. If you ask a question and you want to know something, the answer is there right away. It's limitless. So that's the idea that I get from near-death experience, but especially the feeling that you are loved beyond your wildest dreams. And this is said over and over again by people who have had a near-death experience. So it's really something that is important. For me, if you ask me what is the most important thing of a near-death experience, what do people bring back from their near-death experience, that will be the unconditional love, or the feeling of unconditional love. And the other one will be the feeling of oneness, the feeling that we are all very closely connected to each other, and maybe even that we are so closely connected to each other that we are one, that there is a oneness that we are part of. But the unconditional love, that's really, imagine how that there's nothing you could have done on earth that would prevent you from having this love, because there are no conditions there. If you look at what religions say, they are full with all kinds of conditions. And we are always brought up with a lot of conditions. And on the other side, there is unconditional love. There's nothing you can do that will prevent you from having that kind of love. And some people say even the words unconditional love are not really covering it all, because the real thing is much bigger. Difficult to wrap your head around that.
Is there a consistent pattern to what people say they see during an NDE, or what they experience?
No, the short answer is no. The longer answer is that every near-death experience is different from another. Some people say even that they were presented with things that were that would be more interesting for them, or more that they could relate to, like
custom tailored experience.
Yeah, custom tailored. Yeah, you could say it like that. Yeah. But it can go anywhere. It's like some people see wonderful landscapes, some people see just geometric figures, some have only conversations with a being of light, or there's no set way of going through this experience. If you read or listen to NDEs, they are all different. That makes it difficult to really research them, but it's that's why we have the Grayson scale, with a lot of questions that people would have, like the feeling that time is not there on the other side, or that you have beings of light, or the light that you converse with, or that you had a life review, what we discussed before, things like that.
That kind of leads me into another question that I already had pre-prepared, which is the brain activity during an NDE. Like, if everybody has their own tailored experience, is there research that is being done or can be done to figure out, like, is there some kind of chemical being released into the brain during these experiences, or what kind of activity,
Yeah, that's a good question too. That's a question that many people have, and that's has been researched already. Interestingly, that there has been research in the country that I live in. That's the Netherlands. That's the first study of this form where they asked, they created a database of like 344 people that had cardiac arrest. So they had during 13 years, everyone who would be brought into the 10 hospitals who were participating in this study. If you would be brought into that hospital with a cardiac arrest and you were resuscitated later, because otherwise you can't speak with them. The only question that was asked then would be, did you have a recollection of the time that you were out? And then of these 344 people, there were like 62, I think, who had a memory of their time being out. And those were the people who had a near-death experience. They had a very clear memory of what they have been seeing on the other side. That's interesting. People have a very clear memory of it, and they say it's real. It's more real than we are having in this life on this world. And then you have two groups. One group that doesn't have, who didn't have a near-death experience, and the other group who did. And then you can see if there are differences between those groups, because if there would be a difference, then that could constitute the NDE, or that could be the reason why the NDE would be there. There were no differences there. Both groups suffered of a lack of oxygen. Both groups were dying. They had chemicals that were created in a dying brain. So those two things were ruled out, but still we don't know what causes an NDE. And interestingly, this study was repeated in the United Kingdom and in the United States, in your country. So, and with the same results, that that these two things, like lack of oxygen and chemicals in the brain, do not account for or cannot create a near-death experience.
So there has to be some other factor that's causing the near-death experience in these certain people, but we just haven't identified that yet.
Yeah, and it's also very difficult to pinpoint the time when it occurs, because, well, most of the time people have, well, it can happen under different kind of circumstances, like with an accident or a cardiac arrest or any other medical critical situation, but not always are people in a controlled environment. I mean, if you have a car accident, you have your near-death experience, there's no one to monitor when your heart stopped or so. So that would be more in a hospital kind of setting. And there has been a few cases where people were monitored, but still it would be very difficult to pinpoint when the heart really stopped, or sort of they know when it stopped, but when did the NDE happen? That's difficult to really see. There was one case of Pam Reynolds, who was a singer. I think she was regionally famous for singing. She had a near-death experience because she was in an operation where they had to perform what they called the operation standstill. She had an aneurysm in her head, and they had to repair that. And they took the blood out of her body. They cooled her body down to like 15 centigrade. And then at that moment, when the doctors were busy, she popped out of her body and she saw what the doctors were doing. And later she could tell what the procedure was and what the nurses said about her veins in her legs being too narrow or too small to be used. So the doctor said, well, try the other one, or things like that. So she could hear exactly what was said. She saw the tools that they used. And then she had her near-death experience. And then later she had to go back again to her body, and she was able to tell what happened. Sort of then you could tell sort of when the NDE happened. But the NDE sometimes is so much more so lengthy, and while in time, in earthly time, it may have been just a half minute or a few minutes, or sometimes longer than that. But the story itself is much, much longer.
I love topics and conversations like this. They are one of the reasons that we started this podcast and named it what we did, because when you're finding the flow of a conversation like we do, you often, there are questions created in what you say, and there are often questions that are touched upon that I come up with in my research, and you just hit like 3 of them in the last 2 minutes, which makes me
I was
feel
gonna say
really good.
that segues really well into the next question that I was actually going to ask.
I could go to like 3 or 4 of them from that, but I'm going to let Kip do the next one.
Okay,
so
good.
You're speaking, what you just spoke about was a woman that had an out-of-body experience, saw things that she would not have been able to experience. Now, that's called, I know there is a phenomenon called veridical near-death experiences.
Yeah, veridical observations within a near-death experience, yes.
Can you explain that a little more in depth, and what that is, and how that could potentially happen? Because
that's important, because otherwise these stories just stay like fairy tales. They are nice stories, and it is something nice to listen to, but for me as a scientist, I need some more proof that these stories are real. Now, out there, you have to imagine like 5% of the people, or 4 to 5% of the people have had a near-death experience. So that's a large number if you take it to the general public in the United States. But only from a subset of those do we have stories that contain veridical observations, so verifiable observations later on. And I just gave you one with the woman who had her near-death experience and met her baby brother on the other side, who told her, well, tell your father that you met me, and tell him how I looked like, so as to give some kind of evidence. But the other one is like the one with Pam Reynolds. She was able to exactly tell what kind of tools the doctors used, the conversation that went on. And there are so many of these stories. There's also a story, for instance, of another doctor who was performing a heart surgery on a patient. And the patient at one point left his body and was able to see the whole scene. And he could look through the table. Typically, people, when they leave their body, they sort of hover against the ceiling, and then they look down. Most of the people look down on what is happening there. And this person could just look through the table and saw that the doctor was wearing boots. And he also saw what the doctor did. The doctor was a Japanese person, was in an American hospital, and he would put his arms, I cannot show that to you, but the hands he put next on his chest, and with his elbows he would point at the tools that he would be wanting to use. And he did that because he wanted to keep his hands sterile. So when he starts the operation, the hands are sterile, and he wanted to keep them as sterile as possible, as long as possible during the operation. And the patient saw what he did, and he said it was like he was flapping his arms around. It was so strange to see that. And this is not something that all doctors do. This is only what he did. So it was an individual something that the doctor did. And yet he was later told by the patient that he saw him doing this kind of stuff. And also here, he could tell what they were doing, and that was later confirmed. And for me, the confirmation, an independent confirmation by a third party, by someone else, in this case, the doctor, who was not in, well, he didn't have the NDE. That is important. You have to have an independent someone who confirms the story of the one who has the near-death experience. And there are, as I said, there are really so many of these stories, and that's, for me, that's, there are so many of those that it's in itself, it starts to be a database that you can research, and then it becomes science again. Otherwise, science would say, yeah, those are just stories. You have a number of stories, but that's not scientific. We need some more or different kind of research. But if there are so many of these cases, then it starts to be science.
Are these
I have to imagine
experiences
that?
Go ahead.
I have to imagine that there are a certain amount of people, because there's going to be skeptics everywhere. So
yeah,
somewhere there has to be an amount of people that are calling BS on this.
Yes.
Does religion have an effect on the experience? Like are agnostics and atheists seeing their dead loved ones in God and all this stuff during near-death experiences?
Oh, good question. That was one of the things that was researched in this study in the Netherlands that I said, that I mentioned, where they had all the hospitals, or 10 hospitals that they had during 13 years. One of those things was that they researched the belief system of the patients, and that was not important either. Near-death experiences happen to anyone. They happen to people from all kinds of religious backgrounds, also atheists. They happen to rich people, poor people, any color that you can imagine, any country that you can imagine. They happen everywhere. And that's the interesting thing. It is not something that is limited to a number of people, not to Roman Catholics, for instance. Anyone can have them.
I got to imagine it's changed somebody's perspective of the afterlife or belief. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. The thing is that most NDEs who have, well, after their near-death experience, they change their belief system. They become less religious, but more spiritual. Because they discover that religions are actually, this is a quote that many people say. Any religion leads to God. That's one of the quotes. So it doesn't matter in which religion you are, you can go to God with that religion. Also, when you are atheist, the road leads to God. And I don't like the word God because it's religious connotated. I rather use the word source. But since people quote, this is a quote, that's why I need to use the word God. Yeah. So, and the religious backgrounds, typically people, well, sometimes people do see Jesus, but those would be people that have a religious background in Christianity. But also other important religious figures are seen in near-death experiences. In India, for instance, people would see Krishna. In Muslim countries, Muhammad or one of the other important people. The near-death experience is so not of this world that people say we can't tell you what it was because we lack the words and the concepts to express or to explain what it was. So then people revert to things they know. And then that's what I think, that people then would refer to religious people of their own religion.
What's interesting to me about what you just said is that these people in different parts of the world of different religions are basically saying that they're seeing, for lack of a better term, the prophets of their religion.
Yes.
But never actually God himself.
That's not almost. That's not totally true. People do see God. That's interesting. Some people say they have conversations with God or with the light. That's being mentioned over and over again. The light is something important. But some people do have what they say they met God, and that must have been the only one. As an example, let me give you Christina's story that I really like so much. Christina was a girl of 8 years old. She was abducted by two men, and they tried to drown her, which fortunately didn't succeed. But she was having her near-death experience. She went through a tunnel, and many people have a tunnel, but very many people don't have a tunnel in their near-death experience. Just to show you that any near-death experience is different from another. And then at the end of the tunnel, there was this elderly person, and she said it could have been no one else than my heavenly Father, so God, so to speak. And she had a conversation with this heavenly Father, and the heavenly Father said to her, you have to go back, but life is easy. It has only 4 ingredients, and these are love and be loved. Those are 2, love and be loved, and just be and experience life. So that's what the heavenly Father told to her. But this is just an example of someone speaking to God. There are many people that say, well, I had a conversation with God, or I saw God, or God told me it's not my time and I had to go back, and things like that. So rejection, lovingly rejection, because that's the thing that they say. It's always with love. It's no one is angry on the other side. That's interesting.
With as personal as these near-death experiences seem to be, and focused so much on the individual that's experiencing it, are there any patterns that tend to stand out that are universal with a near-death experience?
Well, as I said, tunnels, some people go through a tunnel. They say, I was sucked out of my body and then I flew through a tunnel or something like that. But not everyone has a tunnel. Actually, a minority has a tunnel. So there are some items within a near-death experience that we see with many others, but not all of them. That's why I said every near-death experience is different from another one. It's not like everyone goes through the same system or through the same story. So it's different. Every NDE is different, and like the tunnel is something that people would see. Live reviews are had by people, but not everyone. It's a subset of people who have had a live review. Deceased relatives are seen, but not by everyone. Spirits, light beings are spoken to. Wonderful landscapes, but not everyone. Again, not everyone has it. That makes it.
It's interesting. It's very interesting that it is something that is almost completely tailored to the experience.
Yeah, well, in some cases, the NDEers said, I spoke to a few of those, they said they were welcoming me, and they did that in the way that for me would be the best way. And one of them said I was put in this wonderful environment with such a nice park-like scenery, and another one that's also interesting has something similar, but she was when her NDE started, it was in a dark, velvety environment. That's something that that many people also experience. So a wonderful, velvety feeling, dark area where there is nothing there. only your thoughts are there. You can't see your body, you can't see anything, but you know that you are there. Your conscious is still there, but there's nothing there. And she said the feeling was wonderful. I felt unconditional love, and I was hanging there, and it was really amazing. And then after a while, she thought, I'd like to see something else. I mean, this is interesting, but there's nothing to see. And then the next thing she saw was what she said. This is a quote. I saw a hand with a number of brushes coming along and painting, going back and forth and painting the most wonderful landscape that I could imagine, with rolling hills and butterflies flying around and trees and whatever, flowers, things like that. So she wanted to see something else, and that's what she got. That's it. They are welcoming her. It's interesting.
Does your research get a lot of pushback from like naysayers and deniers?
There are a lot of skeptics, yes. And what I do with skeptics is I show them that there is a lot of veridical observations, and some of them very, very well documented, and they're all independently confirmed by third-party people. And if they don't like that, or they say that's, and they stick to the idea that it's just a trick of the brain or so, or the dying brain and stuff like that, then I leave them alone, because it's no use talking to them. They will always find an excuse why something happened, whereas I know that it's different. I've spoken to so many people who had a near-death experience, and if you really speak to some of those, they are so sure, so certain about what they have seen. It's not something they can make it up. So it must have happened. Something must have happened. We still don't know what it is. It's easy to think that would be the afterlife, and that actually is being said by many near-death experiences. Some people say, "Oh, this is how it feels to be dead." They realize that they are dead. They know it, and then they have this whole story. So if dead is not being away or not being there anymore, your consciousness is still there in a very strange way. You're capable of doing anything. There are stories of people that thought of, this is an actual story of a guy in Iran who had a car accident somewhere. He was brought into a hospital, and when he was outside his body and he's seeing the doctors performing operations on him, he was thinking of his mother. And at the moment that he thought of his mother, his consciousness was in the room where his mother was, like that was a few hundreds of kilometers away from the hospital. And he could see that the mother was preparing a dinner. And then he thought of one of his friends, and he was in the house of the friend and seeing what the friend was doing. But at the same time, being in the house of the mother, and also being in the hospital. So place is not an issue, and time is not an issue too. You can go any direction in time. It's something that we don't understand, but these are things that near-death experiencers say. The otherworldly environment is totally different from ours.
Some of the things you've said have already kind of like hinted at an answer for me, but is there classifications and levels to these experiences?
I would say some are very deep NDEs, and some are they touch upon an NDE. Like if a person is having a medical critical issue, and is getting out of the body, and they solve this issue, this person has to go back again into the body again. So the time to have a near-death experience is very short. But even with a short period of time, you can have a very lengthy NDE. But so I would say some people have a very deep NDE where they touch upon many of those points in the Grayson scale, and some people just touch upon a few things. They maybe it's, the difference between an out-of-body experience and a near-death experience is that with an out-of-body experience, which is, well, not really common. I didn't have one, but many people have them. But if you leave your body, sometimes people say that they had been sleeping and they see themselves hover above their body and see themselves sleeping and things like that. They come back again quickly. But some people who have had a near-death experience, they get out of their body, so that's the out-of-body experience. But then they have this whole story of this otherworldly environment and that makes a near-death experience. It is the experience where you experience this other realm, or I don't know how to call it, where your consciousness is more than 100% aware of everything, knows everything, understands everything, and then eventually has to go back again.
Do people that experience a near-death experience, okay, that sounds really redundant, but do people that have this experience, does it typically change the way they feel about dying in general? A lot of people have a fear of death. A lot of people have a fear of what happens after, this concept of what comes next. Do people that have this experience tend to change their outlook on death and be more welcoming and less fearful of what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's one of the things that has been researched very good. It has been researched very well. And that's the fear of death is one of the things that is almost 100% hit that it disappears, because near-death experiencers know that there is this other side on the other side, there's something more. Your consciousness does not disappear with your body disappearing or your body being dead. They know that for sure. And if you ask NDEs this question, they would say, I'm not afraid of being dead because I know what is there. They would be maybe afraid of the way they die because, not every way of dying is maybe nice, so to speak. But the fear of death disappears in almost 100% of the cases.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually quite fascinating to me.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just making a comment.
What do these experiences suggest about the nature of consciousness, like in your studies?
Well, consciousness does not stop with the physical death. That's the short answer to this question. It continues. The way it continues eventually, that's for debate. Let me explain that to you. There's a story that I really like of a woman who had her near-death experience. And she said, well, the moment that I left my body was such a relief because there was no pain, there was no anxiety, there were no limitations. I could be anywhere. It was such a liberation. And I knew that I was still there because my consciousness was still there. That's what she said. But then later on, she said, I don't know what happens to my consciousness if I would stay longer on the other side. Because she said at one point, I think my consciousness would dissolve in what we call the Godhead. That's how her quote is in my book. So what she thinks may happen is that we dissolve in God. And we shouldn't be afraid of that, because that is where so many NDEs say that we come from. We come from one source. That's why I like the source word better than God. We come from one source. We play our role on earth. We do what we do. You do your things where you are now in the studio, and the people that listen do the things that they do at home. And I do my things here. And when we die, we go back again to this source. That's where we came from. That's our home. The word home is something that is being mentioned over and over again by near-death experience. They talk about home. That's where they came from. That's where we will go back to, and not only them, but everyone. That's what they say. Home.
It seems like the near-death experience, the one positive of it, whatever it leads to, is it seems to comfort people in what comes next.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
That's kind of a beautiful thing.
It surely is.
Where can our listeners find you online or on social media?
I have a website, and it's www.bobcoppes, B-O-B, and then Coppes is COPPES.com. And they can find my books there. My book is on Amazon, and it contains hundreds of quotes from near-death experiences. And that's what I wanted to show to people, and ordered in certain chapters with certain topics, like a life review. How do you get out of your body? How do you get back into your body? Those are very funny stories too, sometimes. And the love, unconditional love, the oneness. We are
if you
all
have a quick funny one you could share with us, please do.
One person who had to go back in her body, she said, I was always very bad at parking my car parallel. I would always be like 2 feet away from the curb, from the sidewalk. And then she had to go back to her body. And then she said, I couldn't even park back into my body. I was off. I could look from the side into my ears, and I didn't know how to get back into my body. So I was sort of next to my body. And then there was this guy, she was on the pavement. That was many years ago, when resuscitation was just starting to be new. And there was this huge guy who performed a resuscitation technique on her, and pressing his lips on hers. And then when he did that very private moment, when the lips touched each other, it sounds like a love story if I say it like that. But she said, I knew everything about this guy, where he came from, where he lived. And then that made me go back into my body again. I was sucked into my body because of that kiss of life. And I thought that was a funny story. Yeah.
Very interesting.
You know what it was? It was the moment they kissed, she saw everything in his phone and had questions.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So
she immediately came back and went, who is Carol? Who's Carol?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Coppes, we like to say that we are horrible podcasters, and we don't ever know how to finish our podcast. So we stole from the people that ended interviews the best.
Okay.
We like to do a questionnaire that was made famous by Bernard Pivot and tightened up by James Lipton from inside the actor's studio. So I'm going to give you a series of questions. If you could just answer them however you see fit. Relatively short answer questions.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What is your favorite word?
Wine.
What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
What sound or noise do you love?
Harp music.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Hissing sounds of trains and stuff like that.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, I'd love to be a good singer. If you hear me sing, you stop the recording immediately, I know. So I'd love to be a singer that does it well.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
Being a doctor. I don't like blood.
Creatively, what turns you on?
Paintings, as you can see behind me.
And in the same vein, creatively, what turns you off?
Politics. Bad politics by people that are evil and deceive others. Yeah.
What is your favorite
that's
curse
just basically
word?
describing almost all politics.
Pretty much. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. What is your favorite curse word?
Klootzak.
Not familiar with that one.
That's Dutch.
That's
Sir, can we get a
Okay, well-
definition of that one, please?
I kind of like the mystery of it. That's
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to translate that actually.
okay.
We'll just let people Google it. That'll be fun for them.
Yeah. Introduce it in your country.
And this is one of my
There
favorite
you go.
questions. And given our conversation today, it holds a little more poignancy. And I'm going to change some of the wording a little bit just for you.
Okay.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear the source say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would like the source to explain to me why wasps are there. I don't like these animals, and
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know why they are here.
I'm with you on that one. Those are awful, awful creatures.
They seem not to be
When he
steady.
said wasp,
They
I thought
always
he meant
do
the
like
people.
No, not the people.
no, the animals. I don't know what kind of wasp animal